Welcome to the Laws of Style, featuring conversations on creativity, fashion, and the law from the leading edge of our economy and culture. Hosted by noted fashion lawyer Douglas Hand.
Hello, and welcome to the podcast, The Laws of Style.
Great to be here.
Downloading to you from the work from home offices of the law firm HBA, high above Central Park in New York, New York. I'm your host, Douglas Hand, fashion lawyer and fashion law professor. And I'm joined today by GQ creative director, author, and overall menswear lord, Jim Moore. Jim, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. That was a way too kind introduction. I appreciate it.
I butter you up.
I've got to live up to that somehow.
I butter you up for the hard-hitting questions that are going to follow.
You're going to hit me right at the beginning. I can feel it.
Well, okay, yeah. So let's do this. You are such a menswear industry veteran. I mean, 40 years at GQ. How did you get your start?
Well, I always tell people I started when I was 10, so they can't, they can't do the actual math. But it was a long and a short road to get there. I was kind of I was a kid who grew up in St. Paul, Minnesota. And I always felt like I was a little bit of a misfit. I always wanted to dress a little bit fancier than everyone else. I always wanted to, my mother recalls that I was adamant, and I remember this, that my bedroom looked like an apartment, not like a bedroom. So she got me a hideaway couch, that's what we called them in those days, and a glass coffee table, and I wanted to have a swanky apartment, not a bedroom. So that tells you a little bit where it was kind of starting. And very soon I realized that even Minneapolis was kind of a little bit small town for what I wanted to achieve. So as soon as I, was probably on the cusp of turning 19, I headed to New York, and I didn't know anything about being a fashion editor or what that job was. But I knew a lot about Condé Nast. I knew a lot about GQ and Vogue specifically. And you had a voracious appetite for magazines. I would spend all my, money from shoveling snow or the 3 jobs that I had while I was going to school to, buy magazines. And I just loved, the glamour of it all, and the excitement, and who was the person who actually got to go on those shoots and pick the photographer and pick the clothes and direct the shoot. And I had no idea that term was fashion editor, but I knew I had to get to New York and get myself to a learning experience that would someday launch me into my magazine career. So that's kind of the short answer. There was a few bumps in the road, but I got to New York. And my mother was a really big advocate for get out of this town. It's too small for your dreams. And I was really happy to be from the Twin Cities, but I really had my eyes set on New York at a very young age.
Excellent. GQ. I mean, culturally, it has been such a style beacon for menswear for so long. Christ, the acronym itself is used as an adjective all the time. And styles change. The styles have to change, right? Not only to sell clothes, but to sell menswear magazines, styles have to change and evolve. What is the fine line for you and for the magazine to create such compelling content as you do, while either leading the zeitgeist or following the zeitgeist? How do you thread that needle?
Right. So I was at GQ for 40 years. I'm still there. I'm creative director at large. So they call on me when they need me or for consulting situations. But for the most part, I, was full-time during, a big part of the GQ heyday, which is still continuing under Will Welch. But I do remember in the 80s being in planning meetings and, I don't know if it was me or one of my colleagues saying, well, that's very GQ and that's very GQ and that's very GQ. And that kind of to your point, that kind of stuck. So, the greatest thing about being in a magazine is that you get to study the changing ideals of men. And you get to do it generationally, someone who's like myself, fortunate enough to find my dream job and stick with it. I'm a Taurus, so I tend to stick with things, as you can tell, for 40 years, was really a fun, challenging, exciting ride, and it continues. And it is, the most fun is to be able to develop a magazine that really speaks directly to your readers. And I think that's always been the mantra of GQ. It's not, it's, yes, we take beautiful pictures and we have incredible celebrities on the cover, but at the end of the day, we want to give, a lot of nuggets, a lot of style nuggets to our readers. And that has always been the mission statement of the magazine. So, whether it be in 1982 or, 2021, that's always been the mission of the magazine. I think it's why guys come to the magazine. And I think we can really be thankful for Cy Newhouse, who bought us years ago from Esquire for a very little bit of money and knew that we were the engine that could, and put some star power into the editor-in-chief position with Art Cooper, pretty much right off the bat. And then Jim Nelson, and now Will Welch, and three great visionaries with, different but similar missions. So I was lucky to be at the helm of the fashion part of the magazine, and supported and by my kings, by my bosses, and allowed to really tap into the secrets of style and create a style Bible, so to speak. And feel very, very fortunate. And people always say, like, oh, you're an animal, you never stop working. And I said, from the age of 19, I've been in a situation where we had to put out a magazine every 3.5 weeks. So you become a deadline junkie. This is just part of my life. It's not anything that I rest on. I don't plan vacations far in advance. I know that I'm going to have a cover shoot in 3 days or maybe in 3 weeks, and I just roll with it because it's a passion. It's my dream job.
Well, that is the dream, to build your career around a personal passion. You've done an amazing job of that, and you have been busy because last year you published Hunks and Heroes, right? Speaking of the 4 decades at GQ, just for those listeners that may not have read it, tell us about the book.
Well, what I left out in my trajectory of getting to New York is the idea that, when I was a kid, kind of trying to explore my possibilities of breaking into the magazine world, I didn't, there was no internet. So I had to go into the back of the fashion magazines and look up, various schools. Like FIT was for design and Pratt was for, retail or whatever it was. And then I found this ad for Toby Coburn School for Fashion Careers. And it said, if you want to work in the magazine business, come to us. So that's the school I ended up with, which gave me my job at GQ and allowed me to, start running from a very young age and never looking back. So when I was kind of pushed and prodded by Jim Nelson and a few other people, you've got to do this book, you've got to do this book, I got some really good advice from Mike Paternini, who's a celebrated award-winning writer, saying, Jim, I know you're having a lot of anxiety about this. Just know that you don't have to do this book. The choice is yours. And I rested on that for about 2 years. And then Ivan Shaw, who's a good friend of mine and the historian at Condé Nast, said, you have to do this book. You have to put your work into a book, and you have to do it for other people if you don't want to do it for yourself. And it had nothing to do with me not being proud of my work. It was just more of me wanting to look forward and not back. But he convinced me, and we spent, the summer of 2018 going through every GQ from March 1980 and realizing that I was responsible for 30,000 images. I thought we could do it in a weekend. It took us all summer. And then, Rizzoli wanted it, so we went with Rizzoli, and then Dimitri Levis was the designer, and we just kind of hit the ground running. It was a really fun, pleasurable experience, and it was the most fun kind of, the core group of people that were helping me put it together they hadn't seen a lot of the things from the 80s and 90s. So, you know, it was really fun to be the storyteller. And it was actually, the look back wasn't, you know, as nostalgic as I thought it would be. And what I set out to do with the editing of the pictures is to pick pictures that hopefully had a little bit of a timeless feeling to them and could run today. So I wanted to tell my story. I didn't want it to be too wordy. I wanted it to be mostly pictures. And I just kind of chose my favorite pictures. And, you know, there were 1,700 of them out of the 30,000. And then I had to get that down to 300, which was a little bit of a struggle. But once we did, and we were on deadline again, it's just like putting out a magazine, we put it out and I was really happy with it.
So the suit or tailored clothing, I mean, there have been the prognostications of the demise of the suit, probably the entire 40-year career that you've had, you know, going on until today. And COVID and its restrictions have further, perhaps, minimized the importance of dressing up for many, many people, professionals and non-professionals alike. What do you think about that prognostication of the demise of the suit? And you know, then we'll talk business casual after that.
Sure. Well, I think I would rather look at what you're wearing than what I'm wearing. I think you are the epitome of elegance today. And, you know, a suit always does that. You know, it's your coat of armor. When you put a suit on, you get compliments, you know, as much as I think you probably will get more compliments if you put on a suit. You'll probably be more comfortable in a hoodie, but you're going to get less compliments than you would if you were in a suit, right? Now, if you put the hoodie under the suit, then you have, you know, a pretty great formula. You know what? I'm not one of those people who really buys the idea of like the death of the tie, the death of the suit, you know, yes, things ebb and flow and things wane, but I think for the most part, we're seeing a lot of people, for example, Virgil Abloh at Louis Vuitton is committed to tailoring, you know, and we need the next generation of designers to be tailors because that is what the history of menswear is, you know. But as far as like getting a new generation to feel like they need to buy a suit when they really don't need a suit, except for a wedding and a funeral and to get a bank loan or something, I think we got to make the suit cool. And I think there's enough examples of that out there. I'm working with a company now, a client of mine who is really kind of concerned about, you know, the idea that sartorial is evaporating a little bit, the idea of dressing up. And so we're trying to work on pivoting to, you know, a world with less neckties, but it's not a world without neckties. It's not a world without suiting. So I find it incredibly exciting that the suit is being reimagined, and the suit has to be reimagined. You know, there's certain things that, you know, thank goodness for, you know, Brooks Brothers and Ralph Lauren and, you know, the people who are, you know, put their stake in the ground early. And, you know, I always say, and I've said this to Ralph, what would we be wearing today if Ralph Lauren wasn't around? So I think he's someone who has definitely stood for, you know, strong sartorial statements. So we are, I think, in a period where we're working from home, we only have to be seen from the chest up. And that's the only thing that matters right now. But I think there's going to be a moment where we're going to go out in the world. We're probably not going to buy, you know, 6 suits a year like we usually did, but we're going to think of the suit as something very cool still, and something that we're going to put maybe a pair of sneakers with, or we're still going to dress up like you do, or I'm still going to put my suit over my turtleneck, and we're still going to look cool.
Well, it's interesting you bring up, you know, some of the American icons that have epitomized tailored clothing. I wonder what your opinion is of the sale of Brooks Brothers and the recent announcement of Michael Bastian taking over there as creative director.
It was music to my ears. It was exactly what I feel like they needed. I styled a fashion show for them in Tokyo last year. It was their 40th anniversary of being in Japan. And, you know, it was a wonderful experience because they let me go back into the archives, and we gave it a little bit of a 70s bent and wider ties and, but on very young people, and did kind of a cool spin on it. And I found it to be, I had never been in the basement of Brooks Brothers. I had never seen where the stock is, and
Right.
that machine of those people who know every SKU, every style number like the back of their hand.
Yeah, Michael has told me about that. It's crazy.
Right? I mean, it's an incredible institution. And, Michael Bastian is someone who deserves it. He's a modern prepster. He is the guy who is going to take, the rugby shirt and do his spin on it. He is, as you've probably seen his Instagram posts, he's obsessed with the very long collar original Brooks Brothers shirt that has kind of, always had a steady, growth in sales, where in Italy and Japan, where the super fans are, but not so much in America. So he's going to try to bring some of that lore back, but he's going to get cheeky with it. He's going to have fun with it, and it's going to look chic and elegant. So I think they picked the right guy. I'm a big fan of Michael Bastian. I was very sad when he stopped doing his main line, because I felt like we needed that contemporary yet traditional yet very modern thinking designer. So now we have him back at one of the biggest and oldest menswear institutions.
Yeah, it seemed like an absolutely perfect fit to me. And full disclosure, he's a client. We helped put that deal together, which felt good on many levels.
Yes.
So
congratulations, you picked the right guy.
Yeah. Well, back to GQ, and one of the things I've always found GQ does very, very well is spoon feeding for men. Maybe that's a wrong analogy, but for some men, spoon feeding that business casual right zone to still exhibit some chicness, some style, some individuality, but not be in the suit. Why do you think so many men have trouble with business casual?
Because they've been brought up on the idea that you wear a suit to work, and a suit is a very easy thing to wear. It's almost, I always compare it to, like, I'm sure if you're a woman and you put a dress on, that's probably the easiest thing you do, right? You look elegant, you look great. All you need is a handbag and a pair of shoes, right? So when you put a suit on, you're pretty much 80% there. You just need to pick out a shirt and tie or a turtleneck or whatever it is.
Like we're animals for men.
Like we're animals, right? So a suit is really like the thing you get excited about putting on when you get out of the shower and you head to your wardrobe. It's like, I'm going to put the suit on and I just need to pick the shirt and tie. No, I'm going to wear the navy today, the gray tomorrow, the olive the next day. So business casual was really conundrum for guys. And I remember in 91, we devoted an entire issue to it, because that was when it was just starting to come into the ether. And Art Cooper is like, we need to demystify this idea. And so we spent some time in law firms and bankers' offices and saw that they were taking business casual to the extreme. And so I came up with this term saying it was casual Fridays in those days.
Right.
So I came up with this saying, which was Friday is not Saturday, because there was a moment where you would go into these law offices and it was just caution to the wind, ripped jeans and sweatshirts and sneakers, and no. So we kind of did our first guide to how to pull it together. So the reason it's, getting back to your question, the reason it's so difficult is because it's a third wardrobe. Suddenly the guy has to think a little bit harder about, like, maybe a sport jacket, a pair of pants, what goes under it. If I don't wear a sport jacket, can I wear a jean jacket? Can I wear a chore jacket? What's going to be appropriate for the office? All of a sudden it gets confusing, it gets overwhelming, and it gets exciting too, because you can express yourself a little bit more. Not that you can't with a suit, but so I think there was a lot of anxiety around that. We devoted a lot of pages to it when it first started coming out, and we still talk about that a lot. Like, what's appropriate in the workplace when there really are no rules, when the hinges are off and you can wear anything.
Well, so in the laws of style, we certainly talk about business casual and don't take business casual casually as one of the laws. I guess I'm curious, Jim, what from your perusal of the book, what law did you think for white collar professionals was either the best crafted as a law or your favorite?
Well, first of all, thank you for doing that book. Thank you to the American Men for doing that book, because, I feel that you put your spin on, kind of the thing that we do every month, but you put it in a book, and you made it very concise, and you made it very pointed, and especially to the professional community that has to look good, that has to go to meetings with the boss, that has to always, for me, it's always about having that jacket handy. You can take the jacket off when you get to you can hang it on the back of your door or the back of your chair, or who knows if we're ever going to have offices again, but you can hang it somewhere. But at least it's there. So if a meeting is called and we know it's a spontaneous world, the jacket is there. You are silently judged by people by the way you are dressed. And as Tom Ford once said, dressing up is a form of good manners. It shows that you respect yourself, you respect your clients, you respect the workplace. So what I said before, which is Fridays is not Saturday, is probably the biggest rule for me. And I know it's the biggest rule for you in your book, which is, dress for work, don't dress for painting your house. This is a workplace. This has to, things have to get done, and you got to look good. So it's really the art of fitting in, but also standing out a little bit too. Because this is a moment where you can express yourself a little bit more maybe than in your suit. So find your style niche, so to speak. I think for me, one of the saddest things is when I see a group of guys meeting outside of a building. Maybe they're smoking, maybe they're just chatting, and they're all wearing the same blue shirt, and they're wearing all the same khakis. And that has become kind of the uniform of dread, I feel. It's like if just one of those five people in their blue shirts stood out and wore like a tipped polo shirt and a pair of gray tropical weight pants and a pair of loafers. I mean, that's kind of the way to go to the office. It's not wearing the pale blue pirate shirt and the baggy khakis, and that's still out there. I keep waiting for the trend to die, but I think you want to have a bit of tailored on you at all times, and you don't want to wear sweatpants. You can wear a casual pant, you can wear a pant with elastic around the waist, but it should fit like a trouser. If you're wearing a polo shirt, it should have an elegance to it. If you're wearing a jacket, it can be unconstructed. If you're wearing sneakers, they should be simple and clean. These are all things that are appropriate for the workplace, but don't look like the weekend. You have to create your own separate wardrobe. It's not, it's like I said, it's not the weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think, and maybe you can confirm or deny, that the importance of fit has finally trickled into most closets. I'm not going to say all closets by any stretch of the imagination, but a recognition of fit, a recognition of drape, maybe not a recognition that tailored clothing is important and brings most, I'll say, men to that eudaimon mean of, shoulders broader than waist, not wildly so, but some ideal of the David, right? And who doesn't want to look like Michelangelo's David?
I think I'm a big proponent of fit. I think fit is king. You can find your own fit. I'm not saying everything has to be, a skinny suit, but I do, just to bring it back to my book for a second, my favorite spread for all the celebrities that I've ever shot, my favorite spread in the book is still the first day that we developed an initiative called Project Upgrade, which was a way to do makeovers. Jim Nelson was like, I don't like the word makeovers. So he came up with Upgrade, which I thought was great. And then we literally went out on the street and found guys that we thought were kind of diamonds in the rough, and they were wearing their clothes too big. Of course, this was the era of the skinny suit in the mid 2000s. And, there's a picture of a guy who was a limo driver, and he was wearing a black suit, and he was kind of getting it all wrong. He was a very young guy. He didn't look young because of the fit of his suit. He knew he had to wear a black suit. He probably hated putting that black suit on, but he had to do it for work. And then we transformed him by putting him in a suit he could afford, because that was part of it too. I'm not going to just put this guy in Tom Ford. So he could afford about a J. Crew price point. So that's what we put him in.
Yeah.
And just, little things like buying the right size or making sure the pants are the right length or whatever. People look at that spread because it's a before and after reveal. And people are like, how long did it take him to lose the weight? Was that 6 months? And I said, no, that first one's a Tuesday, the second one's a Wednesday. It's all has to do with the fit of the suit. So I will always like what a suit does to you. I think it's your coat of armor. It holds you in. And if you like a more unconstructed feel, that's great if it works on your body. If you like a slouchy feel, like more of a runway suit with a pleated pant, that's cool too. But I do feel like, the suit you should wear the suit, and the suit shouldn't wear you, and it should really enhance the way you look. And, the key to great style is finding a good tailor, let's face it.
Absolutely. And know their name and send them a card with a tip at Christmas or the holidays, New Year.
I'll remember that.
Let's pivot a little bit to legacy and entitlement that is kind of coded in certain manners of dress. And again, I do touch on this in the laws of style because within a law firm setting or an investment bank setting, you are not the junior guy in the bow tie unless you want a short life at that particular firm, or the guy who walks in the door day one with suspenders and a contrast collar shirt. Do you agree that there are certain articles of clothing that are charged with that legacy and entitlement? And do you think that maybe some recent offerings, I'll maybe say rowing blazers, or just sort of ironic statements perhaps about some of those vestiges, those patriarchal vestiges of entitlement, are interesting culturally and socially?
I do. I think, I think if you're going to go for it, then you really should go for it. And I think it really has to be an extension of your own personal style and how you see yourself in the world and what kind of a suit that you love. And I had this question recently. I was teaching a class and someone stood up and said, I don't feel like I have personal style. How do I find personal style? And I said, if you don't feel you have personal style, pick someone, a celebrity or someone you like, and copy them, and then after time, that will become your own style. But I think what's important with what you're talking about, the vestiges of style, the sartorial code, so to speak, I think it's, for me, I'm not so caught up on rules, but if you're going to go for it, you better get it all right. You better, if you're going to wear a 3-piece suit, the dimple in the tie better be precise, and, I look the way you're dressed and everything is perfect, right down to the glasses that fit your face, everything works, right? And you've thought about it and it's thoughtful and it's not boastful, but it's respectful. And I think that is good sartorial style. And that is going to work whether you're wearing, a Zegna suit or an H&M suit, as long as you have the confidence to pull it off. And
yeah, well, and confidence is key, right, Jim? I mean, what is more attractive and engaging than confidence? And if you can find garments that give you that, wow, I mean, that's like supercharged.
I agree. I think men stylistically are born insecure, and maybe they're a little bit insecure their whole adult life. And the confidence sometimes is based on compliments, and I'm not talking about someone like yourself who knows how to put it all together, but the average guy who might want to experiment with, like, okay, I've done the navy blue suit and the blue shirt and the blue tie, I want to try something a little bit different. As they start to grow and build on their own personal style, and as they start to get compliments, the confidence just rises up. And I think, that's a snowball effect. Once you start getting, once you start getting the compliments, you feel really good, and you start to experiment a little bit more with, like, you know what, no one likes yellow, but I like yellow. I'm going to try a yellow shirt. And then that suddenly it's like, okay, I found my style. It's dark suits with bright shirts or whatever it is. And that becomes the thing that makes you stand up a little bit straighter and walk through the door with
And then you look better. And then
and
you
you
get
look
more positive feedback. And yeah.
exactly.
Well, you touched on something interesting for kind of the breadcrumb trail for the guy that is maybe looking for some style avatar. And GQ has always done such a great job with their covers, and then really exploring the individual style of some of these notable men. There's no way you can pick one. I won't even limit you to a number, but maybe, three of your favorite, whether past or present, covers and men of style.
Doing covers is a very interesting thing, because it is my job, or my goal, or GQ's goal was always to make Ryan Gosling or LeBron James or Drake or whoever it is that we're putting on the cover at that moment in time, to make them look the best they've ever looked, and maybe put them in a situation where they look very GQ. And I think what's been really fun for me is to have the opportunity to work with, an 18-year-old Ben Affleck, and then a 26-year-old Ben Affleck, and then a 40-year-old Ben Affleck, and see them watch the trajectory of their career. It's one of the fun things about being there for so long, is that, I see these people grow up, or see Channing Tatum as a model and then as a superstar, and putting them, in a little picture in the front of the book, and then that turns into, 4 covers later. So that's a really fun part of my job. If I would have to kind of single out favorite covers, favorite person ever to photograph, hands down, Kobe Bryant. And Kobe Bryant, who unfortunately left us last year, is just the greatest guy. He's a very classic guy in the way he dresses, and I'm sure he's still up there dressing, beautifully.
Looking perfect. Something for that as well. The time in Italy may have informed a little bit of that. Not to diminish anything of Kobe's choices, and I'm a huge Lakers fan, and from California, so you couldn't not be. But also great fit model. His body and his dimensions.
Yes, and I think for me, beyond the clothes, it was just the friendship I had with him, and also the way he would come onto set and have individual conversations with people, not just like a blanket greeting to everybody. Remember everybody's name. If someone wanted to talk to him, he was there for them one-on-one. So, and this was a consistency, a real family man, someone who you just couldn't wait for him to come through the door so you could have a great conversation with him. And that's like, I'm getting, goosebumps just thinking about him right now, because he's an amazing guy. I'd have to say that my favorite cover of all time, because it put me in a situation that was pretty legendary, was Obama, because I shot him twice. I shot him when he was president-elect coming into office, and then the president of the United States leaving office. So the swagger kind of increased, from, I digress a little bit to this idea that I get to shoot people, at different stages of their career. So the swagger that Obama had the last time we shot him in the White House, just the fact that I've got 11 minutes with the president, I get to tell him to change his tie because, he's amenable. He's excited to be on the cover of GQ. We have to, deal with all of the pomp and circumstance of the White House. And when he walks in, he's just the most personable guy. So that's a real career highlight for me. And then, there's so many covers. One of my favorite covers is the Ryan Gosling cover, where he's wearing Ralph Lauren and he's in a gray suit with a white shirt and a gray tie. It was right around the time when Mad Men started to percolate in the culture. And, I was running around asking my fashion editors to find more tie bars and, let's do pocket squares more. And let's bring kind of the gentleman back. And Ryan Gosling was kind of the poster boy for that. So,
Yeah.
but it is hard to pick, but those are some favorite moments.
I'll ask, I'll sort of put an addendum on the question, which is, you're taking a guy who may actually have no style and making him GQ, who walked in with either the confidence or already the style quotient where you said, make your own choices, dude, you have this.
I photographed Sean Penn once, and I've only done this for two people, Sean Penn and Harrison Ford. And basically we were told on both of those covers that they needed to wear their own clothes, which is something I don't want to hear. I don't want, it's like, I'm like there to dress them, and I'm there to give the cover a look. And this was kind of a deal breaker. And in both cases, Art Cooper with Sean Penn, Jim Nelson, editor-in-chief with, with Harrison Ford, was to actually, with Harrison Ford, I got to go to his house and kind of play with clothes with him. With Sean Penn, he was just going to show up and we had to deal with it. And in both cases, the editor-in-chief said, "Are you okay with this, Jim?" Because I could see me getting a little rustled and nervous. And Sean Penn showed up, did his hair himself, camera ready, walked on set. We didn't even know he was there. We looked over and he was sitting on a stool waiting to be photographed because he kind of snuck in the back door at an LA studio. We shot him and he only gave us, I think, 30 minutes or 45 minutes. At the minute that time was up, he shook everyone's hand. He was very personable and he left. But, the cover looked incredible. He was wearing a black suit and a black shirt, his hair slicked back, and it was the 90s. So, he looked cool. And then with Harrison Ford, I got to go through his closet with him, but those are probably the only two exceptions.
Little Laws of Style anecdote about that Harrison Ford shoot, if it was the more recent one.
Yes.
Kind of catapulted Jason Scott's business. We had him on the podcast a couple of months ago. And obviously, for Harrison Ford to choose to wear a Jason Scott, a relatively unknown designer at that point,
Yes.
and a t-shirt no less, was
Yes.
for him, massive for him.
Incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, he's Harrison Ford. He's the man. He has an incredible closet, and you might not think he is the guy who is meticulous about what he wears, but he certainly is. And, and if I wanted him to try on 20 t-shirts, he would try them on. He was enjoying having me in his closet and showing me, all his iterations of sartorial and casual and everything. So that was a really special day.
Well, maybe related, but much more general question. You're a world traveler. GQ has taken you everywhere. Your own travels have taken you everywhere. What cities, and again, I won't limit you by number, but what cities do you find men are the chicest? And whether that's clothing or the way that they present and eat and live, but what three cities are menswear meccas?
I mean, New York will always be my favorite because, I've said this before, but I could be at the collections for 3 weeks, London, Milan, Paris, and get more inspired by sitting, in an outdoor cafe and watching the way people walk by with their various costumes on in New York City. So that is a huge inspiration for me. I think what's fun about New York City is if you really want to see guys dressed in sartorial splendor, you go to the Upper East Side. And if you want to see people dressed, cool and hip, you go to Soho or wherever. But I feel like it's super inspirational to me. I feel like, I've been out here because of the quarantine in California for a while, missing New York, missing, those long walks and seeing all the street culture. After that, I would say Milan. It's kind of, I wouldn't say it's an underrated city, but it's that city that people are like, well, that's the place that everyone works in Italy. And, Milan and Rome, kind of for me go hand in hand, but Milan, just the idea that people are getting up and going to work, and it's that Italian sensibility. If you were to stop an Italian man and say, "I love your suit, where did you get it?" He wouldn't be insulted, but they pride themselves on not being fashionable. They pride themselves on having really great style and playing it down if you ever call them out for it. And you know that they spent an hour putting themselves together. You know they're meticulous about how their shoes are shined and what sock they picked and, you know, how the pocket square is in their pocket. But they throw it off in a very nonchalant way, but incredibly well-dressed Italians. And then probably London. I always say London's a man and Paris is a woman, you know, so London is another place where it's great to see that the suit, I think still to this day, it has a lot of respect, and people get dressed up, and obviously that's the birthplace of dandyism, and it's still there. And it's especially inspiring for me to see a young generation, you know, still looking snappy and still wearing a suit and getting a good haircut. And those would be my three.
Yeah, no, those are all great choices, undeniably so. Menswear tends to categorize itself. Really, all fashion tends to categorize itself, but I find more than women's wear, menswear tends to appropriate from, say, well, this is surf wear, this is heritage workwear, this is white collar, this is street, you know, whatever the hell that means. What do you think about that appropriation? You know, is it men being costumey, or is it men attempting to integrate an element of something that they are fond of or identify with? And can you ever really gain inclusion by appropriating the style?
I think, you know, men have style heroes, and it's the reason, you know, the circulation of GQ took off like a rocket as soon as Art Cooper said, we're going to put celebrities on the cover. And I remember questioning that and saying, how are celebrities going to sell more shoes than models? Of course, we're talking about 1984 or something. And of course he was right. And of course, you know, Joe Theismann was the first celebrity cover of Art Cooper's era. And then from there was Michael Caine, and then it was Mel Gibson, and, you know, and the numbers just like went crazy. And I think it's because if there's any insecurity with men on how to dress, they're certainly going to look at their style heroes. They're going to look at, you know, Michael Jordan, they're going to look at LeBron James, they're going to look at their NBA, you know, squad, and they're going to try to emulate it. So if Mike is wearing a suit, the rest of the NBA is going to start wearing a suit, and then that's going to trickle down to the public, right? Yeah. So if, you know, a young rogue basketball player is, you know, head to toe Gucci or head to toe streetwear, that's going to have a big influence. So I feel like whether it be, you know, a musician or whether it be, you know, an NBA player, those are two super big experiences, because it's like sports culture is already built into, you know, menswear for the most part. And I think the more kind of peacocky the guys, the athletes get, the more that it gives license for guys to experiment a little bit more. So I have to say we're sitting in a very unique moment right now where kind of anything is possible, and, you know, anything is appropriate to wear, and anything is acceptable. And, you know, there's some people can get a little bit nervous by that, but you can find your lane, you can find your squad and go with it. But I think it makes for really good, personal style. It makes for really good eye candy. It makes for a really good culture overall.
Yeah. Well, what are some contemporary menswear brands that you lean towards or think are doing interesting things and pushing those boundaries forward?
I'm a big fan of Jerry Lorenzo at Fear of God, and I like what he's doing with his main collection. And I like that he has this essentials line that he was originally started with PacSun. So he's thinking about a democratic price point because his clothes are very expensive. Right. And I've known him, Kanye is a very dear friend of mine, and I've known Jerry forever when he was Kanye's assistant. And seeing how he's evolved, he used to love rock and roll t-shirts, and that was his whole thing. And now he's evolved into his own collection. and how he's created kind of luxury wear, he calls it luxury streetwear. And then he hooked into the Xenia collaboration,
Right.
which kind of showed that Jerry has this real refined elegance. And he's always saying to me, he's saying this to the public, that he's still learning. He's still learning how to build a suit, or how to build something that's sartorial but is still speaks to the kids, or has a streetwear edge. So he's someone that I always watch and want to give credit to. I love the latest collection of Virgil's for Louis Vuitton. I think is spectacular, because within that collection, there's so many ideas. Some people might say too many ideas, but you're talking about the mind of a creative, whirlwind, and just give us all your ideas, and it felt like he was just so pent up from the quarantine, and he just gave us 50 incredible ideas. I still, I love what Tom Ford does. I think it's really exciting what's happening over at Prada with Raf joining Mrs. Prada. And I'm a huge Ralph Lauren fan, but new designers. I love what Kirby's doing at Pyra Moss. I love Emily Bode. I think she's got a really sophisticated bohemian spirit about her that we haven't seen before. And I'm working on a mentorship. I've been doing it for about 6 months, where I'm mentoring the Black community, and especially menswear professionals, designers, creative directors, stylists, photographers.
And is that through an organization that you can mention?
It's my own. It's called The Mentors. Okay. And I just launched it on IG back in August. And I invited my friend, Rachel Johnson, who's a stylist for a lot of athletes, to do it with me. So we're doing it together. And the idea came 3 years ago. We were shooting Colin Kaepernick for the cover of GQ. And it was a very polarizing, controversial thing to do, but the right thing to do. And we were all excited to put him on the cover. Rachel was his personal stylist. She's a good friend of mine. Normally, I don't always invite the stylist on set, but her and I have a great collaboration. And it was really Colin that said, Jim, Rachel, would it be possible for me to wear all POC designers? And I thought that was a great idea. We had to kind of scramble and get it all made. But at the end of the day, it was that moment shooting Colin in an undisclosed location so we could have a big reveal of the cover, putting him in all POC designers, and getting a little bit of a 70s edge, writing a beautiful article about why we stand behind this man who has so many causes, that really formed a deep bond between Rachel and I. So when I had this idea, I called her, and we're mentoring we're probably up to about 20 people right now. And we're connecting them with other people in the business. And we invite through Instagram for people to apply. And, there's a certain criteria. You have to be in it to win it. You have to have a plan and a mission and ask good questions. But we welcome, it's called The Mentors. And, we welcome anyone who wants to, who needs help, because there's nothing lonelier than being a new designer or a new creative and being on your own and not having any help around you. And, I had a lot of people not answer questions when I was first moved to New York, because I was this kid from the Midwest. But then a couple people did, and those people got me where I am today.
Yeah, well, and it touches on, diversity, inclusion, equity issues. Fashion doesn't have a great track record. It's got a better track record today.
Yes.
In addressing those issues. Publishing as well.
Yeah. We need to be authentic about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we have to move forward and being consistent. And I've met some incredibly talented people, and we've been able to help them. And just looking forward to what the future brings with all of it.
Well, if it's not a 501c3 yet, we should talk offline, and we can get that in place for you.
Okay. Awesome.
Cool. All right. Thanks so much, Jim. It was a lot of fun.
Really a pleasure. Appreciate it. Okay.
Bye now.
You've been listening to The Laws of Style with Douglas Hand. For more information, go to our website at www.hballp.com. And you can also follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Hand of the Law. Thank you for tuning in, and stay stylish.